Hi everybody, greetings from a really sunny morning here. It's spring in Dublin, Ireland. My name is Helene Dooley and I am a mixed media textile artist. I specialise in wet felting and I'm also tutor with the American portal, the Felting in Fibre Studio, and I am the course coordinator for the International Felt Makers Association on their series Discovering Felt Making. Today I'm going to show you how to make a small wet felted vessel. It'll have a fluted top on it. I think it's quite pretty and it is suitable for beginners or for people who are further along on their felt making journey. I actually tried it out on my son there over the past week, and he produced a beautiful vessel, and he's only felted 3 times before. Actually, no, this is third time felting, so I'm quite reassured that this will actually work for people who are beginning to felt, and also for you if you are more advanced. Perhaps you might like to try it and maybe put your own slant on it, but the most important thing about this is just have a bit of fun with it. Now, I'm actually going to work in an absolutely beautiful fibre. It's Corriedale, and come on into the studio now and I will show you the fibre. Here we are now. I'm going to show you the fabulous wool that I'm going to be working with, the fibre I'm going to be working with today. Let me zoom in here. Here we go. Now it is Corriedale, and I love Corriedale because you can use it on all sorts of projects, three-dimensional work, hats, bags, and it's a nice hard wearing fibre when it comes to wearables. This is from Ashford, and I have the fibre sampler packs here, which are gorgeous. Let me open up the light one to start with. Here we go. Now, aren't they beautiful colours? It's going to be difficult to choose which one to use. So there is approximately 38 to 40 grams in each pack. And I can't tell you what that is in imperial measurements, but I'll find out for you and I'll write it on the note that accompany these videos. And here we have the darks. Again, it's like all my birthdays have come together when I opened up these packs from Ashford. What an array of jewel colours. So for the project here, I'm going to only use one of the colours. I can blend them for others, but there will be enough fibre in one of these colours to complete the project. So now we'll move on and I will show you the resist. We'll talk a little bit about resist and I'll show you how I make mine. This part here. Okay, so what can you use to make resists? Well, first of all, you could use, I'm afraid they're all plastic because at least with plastic you can reuse them. You could use your bubble wrap and cut your resists out of the bubble wrap. Or another alternative would be to use the pool lining or a heavy duty plastic that can be reused. And the third and my preferred option is to use underfloor, I think it's called underfloor laminate, but it's used underneath if you're laying down wooden floors, just to soundproof them. So that's available in many DIY stores. So there are the three that we're looking at. And of course we have the little bit of very light plastic. It could be decorative plastic for painting, or what I have used is just a very light plastic bag that is laid between the two main resists, and that will stop your the fibre from the main body of the vessel from sticking to the fluted part at the top. So now to cut them out, because they are slightly bigger than the compass, so I'll show you the way that I do it. Under normal circumstances you could actually just get a big plate and use that, but the issue here is that you want to be able to cut the center part out of the top resist, and you want to cut it in the center. So let me show you the way that I would do it. First of all, I measure off. I take a piece of cardboard. It could be cardboard off a cereal package, just as long as it has that little bit of firmness about it. And I have found what I want to be the center of my circles. So I'm going to draw my radiuses out from there. So I then marked with my ruler. I took the center part here, okay, and I marked out a number of dots on the piece of cardboard. The first one was marked at 4 centimeters, and in imperial that would be 1 3/4 inches. The second was marked at 10 centimeters, and that would equate to about 4 inches. And the third one was marked at 15 centimeters, which would be close to 6 inches or thereabouts. So I then made holes in each of the spaces that I marked as the measurements, okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make those holes bigger, because I want to be able to fit my pen through it. So just making the 3 holes bigger. The one for the center, it isn't really that important because you won't be putting a pen through it. So you might just see there that the holes have been increased in size. Then I would lay this down on top of my laminate, the underfloor laminate, and I would make sure that it stays on the laminate as I draw around, and that position is perfect. So your first circle will be 30 centimeters in diameter, and that is 15 centimeters in radius. So what I'm actually going to do here, because it's kind of a little difficult to hold the pin that I'm using in the center, so I will put a little bit of my bubble wrap underneath, so it just gives me a little bit of traction. And that is okay, that'll work. So I stick the pin in, get my pen, and draw my circle. So there's the first circle. Now, second one, I need to draw 2 circles. One that I'll use for my to cut out my donut, and the second one I will use to, let me see now, I just want to get this right. Yeah, would that work? Yep, that'll fit. That's grand. The second one will be the outside circle. So this, I'm going to draw the circle that is at 10 centimeters first. And then, keeping my pin where it is, I'll draw the inside circle. Slightly awkward, but there we go. Now, and there we have the making of the resist. You cut inside the circle here and outside, and that makes your donut. And then the second one, cut the full circle here, and you have this resist. And then just for the one that separates the 2 resists, if you get your plastic bag, cut down the sides so it opens up to this, then just fold it over and quarter it. Again, fold it and quarter. Now do the same with your resist. Fold and fold. Lay one on top of the other so you know where you're going to cut out. Mark it. And this one, it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Nearly better to have it bigger than the inside circle here, because you don't want it smaller. Cut out the center, and there you have it. So that's how to make the resist. Now we'll move on to preparing the fibre. I have decided that I'm actually going to use two colours from the sampler pack for this vessel, principally because it will be easier for you to see the layout, but also because I think it's going to be absolutely very pretty, beautiful. So I am choosing the olive from the dark sampler and the cheesecake from the light sampler, and there are the two together. I think they would be absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to put the olive on the base and make my frill out of the cheesecake. Now, each of the samples have around 38 grams of fibre in them. That would be, let me see, just give you imperial on that. It is approximately 1.4 ounces. And what I've done is I have weighed out around 30 grams of my main colour that will form the actual base. And that in imperial is just over an ounce, about 1.1 ounces. And then in my yellow, which will be the top, I have about about 6 or 7 grams of the yellow, so around 7 grams of the yellow, and that weighs in at about 1/4 of an ounce in imperial. So they're my two colors. The yellow will form the flute, so I'm going to put that aside for the moment, and the green will be the main base. Now, what you need to do at this stage is to divide your green in 4. So divide your main color, the main base, in 4. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to halve it on the length. So there we are. There's pretty well 2 even halves on it. And then I will take each one of these lengths and I will just divide it like this. So these two will form the top of the main base, and these two will form the bottom. Now you may not use all of the fibre when you're laying out, and don't worry about that, you'll still get a good result. But you will now need to cover your resists in these. So 2 for the top, 2 for the bottom, and then your yellow here, or your top, your frill color, whatever you decide to do it, you can actually have that too, because you will be doing 2 layers. So there we go, just like that. Away for the moment, put the fibre that you have for your frill away for the moment, and because that'll be the last that you will be laying on. So for the moment we will be working on the main base. Now we're going to start with laying out. You'll have a full list of your equipment and your fibre in your notes. So for this purpose we're going to lay down the towel, and then 1 layer of bubble wrap, and it has the bubble sides up. You're going to need the larger of the resists, soapy water. I tend to use an olive soap. Different people use different soaps for this purpose. I tend to stay away from anything that has moisturizer in it because I find that it doesn't work as well. But you use whatever your soap you normally use. I have a ball brace for spreading the water. You might not have that, and that's perfectly okay. You could use something like a sprayer. So that is an alternative. And then you have your second layer of your bubble wrap, which we'll put on top once you've laid down your 2 layers of fibre and you've wetted them down, and also some netting, a light netting that you can just rub your fibre down with. I also keep this handy. It's a piece of sponge, and in the event that I put too much water on the fibre, I can just do a little bit of blotting using the netting in between to take the water off. Why do I do that? Purely because if something is flooded in water, it won't actually felt as well as it would if it just has the right amount of water in it. So we'll put those aside for the moment, and we will start into the layout. Now, I lay out at an angle for circular resists. I tend to liken it to, for anybody who sews, liken it to a bias cut. So everything is laid out at a 45-degree angle initially to the side of the resist, and then I work my way around the resist at the same angle and cover the whole resist in it. Second layer, I then lay out in the opposite direction. So I now have a 45-degree angle going in the opposite way. So the 2 layouts actually end up forming the 90-degree angle that one likes to see for felting, firm felt, and for felting properly. So anyway, we should start. The wispy bits are laid out over the side, and you can go about an inch over your side. So that would be maybe, I can't remember how many centimeters, but you can work it out. There we go, and we're laying out very thinly. All I have done is I've taken one of my 4 lots of wool, and this is what I'm using to lay out my first layer. There will be 2 layers on each side, so very thinly lay it out. I love this about the Corriedale. It is has very long staples, so I find it quite easy to lay out. If you find that you are a little bit concerned about will it stretch, what you could do is eyeball it and divide it in 2, so that you know, okay, when I reach so far on the resist, I still have that amount left to place on it. Okay, I'm going to put the second layer over there for a minute. So as I'm going around, sometimes it can be quite a challenge to keep the angles correct. So I've set this up so I can just move my bubble wrap, and that will help me maintain my 45-degree angle. So, and it's a little easier on my wrists too, that I'm not trying to maintain a 45-degree angle on when it's upside down. So I'm just going to cover the whole of the resist going in one direction at 45 degrees. So if you were to look at that, it looks as if it's going clockwise at the moment. You can see the edge there. And I sometimes liken it to the eye of a storm, because we're going to keep going in that way. So around again. So when you're laying out your shingles in this manner, make sure that you are have an overlap of maybe a third to a half over the previous layer, the previous line. So this will be the bottom of the vessel. And this is, remember I divided my first layer, the fibre for it, in half, so I have plenty left here. So I can keep going on this, and now I'm going to fill in any sort of major gaps where I can see my resist underneath. But the Corriedale, and this is fabulous to work with here. I'm just feeling it. It pulls quite easily, and great, as I said earlier, for hats or for the vessels or bags, and well worth giving a go to. Felt up beautifully too. So I'm literally just filling in anywhere that I reckon I can see through to my resist. And I'm still going in the same direction of layout as I started with, and it's worked its way around. It's in a going in a clockwise direction. Now I'm going to flatten it down slightly. And I will take the second layer now, and I'm going to go in the opposite direction. So the 45-degree angle is going that way on the first layer. Just use my, this isn't particularly clear. Let me see now, what can I use? Here, this might look better. So it's going in this way on the first layer. Now the second layer will be in this direction, so this way. Again, just to make sure I have my coverage, I am going to divide my second layer of fibre in two, and we lay out in the opposite way now. And again, if you're having any issues, just turn your bubble wrap so that you can maintain the layout direction. And of course you're laying over the side of the resist so that you can bring your fibre through to the other side. And continue your laying out for your top side. Now again, remember, when you're laying out your shingles, you still have to cover the previous layer by about a quarter to a half, just to make sure that you don't develop any holes. And that is it going through to the center. Now I'm just going to lay a tiny bit more at the side here, since I have it left over, and I want to make sure that when I bring the fibre through to the other side, that it is an even layer. So again, you can see there the fibres might be kind of difficult to see, but the fibres are actually going in this direction this time. So it's an anti-clockwise direction. Now, the fibres have been laid out. I might just put a little bit more in the center just for good measure. And that is the first side done. So I'm just going to flatten it down very slightly and then wet it out. So I have water here. It is hand warm, so not too hot, because you don't want to rush this process. So just hand warm will do the job. And so fibres aren't particularly greedy when it comes to water, which is great. Some of the coarser fibres can demand an awful lot of water, that being because the sheep, I suspect, living up on mountains, like to keep their skin dry. Now, on top of that, I'm going to put my bit of netting and flatten everything down. Now, once the netting goes on, it is an ideal time to make a decision. Have you got enough soap in your piece, or do you need to add extra soap? So if you do need to add extra, you can always take a little bit of soap and rub it on top of it, and you can then control the amount of soap you have in it. But I'm happy with the amount that I have here. So I'm just literally flattening everything out. A little rub down to form a bit of a skin. And then I will remove the netting. Happy with that. I place my second piece of bubble wrap on top. Get the air out of it. And I'm going to flip it. Now, to flip to the other side, because I want to obviously put the fibre on the other side of the main resist, I put one hand on top, the other hand underneath, and flip it over. And there we have it. Everything has stayed nice and flat, and the fibre is still in place. So then I carefully remove my bubble wrap, and I am ready to start on the second side. Now we're going to start working on the second side of the main body of the vessel. And to start with, what you're going to do is you have an overlap from side one. So you're going to fold that over right to the edge of the vessel so that you don't develop any ridges. You're going to fold it right in all the way around. Now, if you find that the fibre isn't wetted down at this point, the fibre you're folding just give it a quick wet down with your soapy water, bring it all the way around and stretch it out so that you don't have any ridges forming either on top. So keep going and doing this until you have it all folded in to the top side of your vessel. Just like that. Now, this is going to be the top side, and there are a few things I just want to mention to you here. First of all, an easy thing to happen is when you have laid out your second side, you might go off, take a break or whatever, and you come back and wonder which is the top and which is the bottom. So for the top side, because you will have an additional 2 layers going on with the flute, you want to keep the centerpiece here, even though you're going to lay down the green, you're going to keep it very thin. That is number one. But you will still, when you have it wetted down, still be wondering which is the top and which is the bottom. So what I've started doing is gotten a tiny little bit, you can see it there properly against the green, tiny little bit of cotton thread, which when I have laid down all my fibres and I have wetted them down on the top side, I pop that in the center so I know, okay, that's the top. I don't need to fret anymore. Okay, so initially you divided all of your fibre into 4 even parts for the bottom. These 2 layers, you don't need to use all of the fibre. And why is that, you might ask? One reason is that you've actually taken some of your fibre from the bottom and brought it across to the top. And therefore, all of this is kind of added to the top rather than at the bottom side. And secondly, your center point here, you're not going to be laying too much fibre on it, because again, you will be laying your fluted, the fibre for your fluted edge on it, and you don't want a situation occurring where you have 2 layers here, 2 layers there, and then 4 layers in the center part of the flute. So I'm talking about the part that is actually stuck to the vessel, not this this part here. Okay, so I'm just going to dry my hands and we will go and lay out the other 2 layers on the top in the manner that they were laid out on the bottom at a 45-degree angle. So the first thing I will do is, again, I will have my fibre for my first layer. Now, just on that, for anybody who is new to felting, when you're pulling, keep your hands nice and loose. And then one good way that I find of pulling so that it doesn't tighten up on you is just to hold your fibre with one hand. You might be left-handed or right-handed, so I leave it up to you, whichever is your dominant hand, and then pull with the other, and you get a nice, let's see now if I can put it somewhere that you can see it, even layer of fibre. Let's see if I have something here that's black, it might be easier to see it against. So there we go. It's a nice even layer of fibre. And again, you're going to lay it in the, you're going in the clockwise direction this time, and lay it pretty well close to the edge of where the overlap is. Don't go right to the edge this time, or you'll end up with 4 layers at the edge and it'll be thick and it won't shrink properly. So we are going in the clockwise direction to start. And remember, dry fibre, dry hands, wet fibre, wet hands. So I'm only laying it over very thinly in the area where I have brought my fibre over from the other side. So let's just turn this around so it becomes easier to work with. And I'm also sort of making a judgment call on how far. As you can see, the actual flap over is not necessarily even in all spaces, so I'll bring my fibre out slightly further in those areas. So I'm just gauging it basically. And I'm also keeping an eye on any gaps that I might see. Now, when it comes to the center part here, as I said earlier, I want to lay less fibre down. So the part that you pull is always thicker than the wispy part. So instead of laying the wispy part on the outside, I'm going to lay it in towards the center this time, so that there will be less fibre there. Because if you remember, I mentioned that I did not want to end up with 4 layers in the center, because it would be too thick and it wouldn't necessarily felt and shrink properly for me. So the wispy end is going towards the center, so that's important. See that there now, let's see. So that is going towards the center. And in fact, I'm finding that I need a lot less fibre this time. I'm just seeing bits of the base underneath there, so I'm just laying this down to stop any holes forming. So you make a judgment call on it yourselves. If you see any of your resists showing through, then just make sure to cover it up. So that is the first layer of the top layer. So I'm going to go in the opposite direction. As you can see, I haven't even finished off my my fibre from my first layer, so I'm going to go in the opposite direction and lay down my second layer. So even though you've cut off 30 grams of fibre for this, you're going to use a lot less on it. And because we're only using 2, it's a nice quick and easy bowl to make. And because we're only using 2 layers on it, it's made in a jiffy. So keep moving your bubble wrap around if you find it easier to lay out. When some people find the 45-degree angle, it's difficult at the start, but I just liken it, as I said earlier, to the bias cut on clothing. It I think it holds together nicely that way. So center layer again into the center with the wispy part, so you're not getting too thick a layer in the center. So you can accommodate the top layers, the fluted layers. This will be the yellow that we're going to use next. So there's my center, and it's not too thick, but it's covered. And you still actually need to have that the fibre in the center, because if you don't have it, you'll have nothing for the top layer, the yellow, to catch onto. So next we'll wet that down. And then I'm just going to cover it again and flatten this. A little bit of a rub so that it develops a skin, keeps everything nice and flat. The fibres won't move, and I'm just going to take this off now. And I'm going to choose my center, which I'd say is there, and drop in my little piece of white cotton, so I can see that that is my top. And if at this stage you decide, okay, I want to have a break, whatever, you know that when you come back to it, this is the top and the other is the bottom. Now, you might have found that when you were laying out that some of your fibres from the top have gone over the side. So if so, you're going to cover up your piece again, flatten it out, and then flip it. Same way again, hand underneath, hand on top, flip over, and carefully remove your bubble wrap. If you have any fibres that are migrating from the top to the bottom, then at this stage you just fold them in so your piece will be nice and tidy. And I'm going to flip this over again now because we are going to start working on the flute next. Now we're going to continue on and we will lay down the fibre for the frill. So for this you're going to need your top cover colour. Okay, I'm using, in this case, it's the cheesecake from the Corriedale sample pack from Ashford. And you will also need the light resist, which I made earlier out of a very light plastic bag. Again, you could use this or use a piece of decorator's plastic. And on top of that, you will have your resist for your frill. So to start with, I'm going to put down the protector. So this will stop my fibre from my frill from sticking to the edge of the base of the vessel. So again, I've laid that down. You may be able to see it there. It is laid with the white little piece of thread showing me where the center top is. Now at this point I'm going to pop my second resist down. This is the one you're going to work with. So you kind of have a bit of a sandwich here. You have the resist, you have the protector, which will stop the fibre from the frill from sticking to the felting into the fibre from the base, and then you have the base. So at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that little white piece of thread so that now I know anyway where my top is. If you've gone off, you've had a cup of coffee, or you've left this part to another day, taken a bit of a break, well then at least you know when you come back that you're confident the top is where it is. So I'm going to take one of my two fibre layers, and I'm now going to lay them out in the same manner. I want to lay them all at an angle because, again, what I want to be able to do with this layer is I want to be able to stretch it slightly when it is ready to, when it's fully felted and it's just ready to shape, so that I get that nice little fluted edge that you actually see on this one here. That's been stretched out. And again, because it has been placed in a sort of like a bias cut at angles, I could stretch it when it was wet. Now that it's dry, it won't stretch, obviously, but you get that effect on it. Okay, so layer one, same way, go in a clockwise direction, go over the side slightly, and start laying out. This is misbehaving for me. You'll probably find you won't use all your fibre this time, so it's 45-degree angle again. And if you find that you're having difficulties, I'll just remove this one here for the moment, then you can move your bubble wrap and that'll sort it out. So, any difficulties with laying out at that angle? I know it can be difficult to start with. It's it's not something that everybody is used to, but it does come in time. So I'm purposely moving it around so that you can see an alternative way of doing it. Now, if you happen to have one of those lazy Susans, no offense to Susan, but it's a great invention, those things that fit in the center of a table. Absolutely brilliant for this, because you could put your towel and everything on top of it and just twist the equipment underneath it, the Lazy Susan, and you get the same sort of effect as moving it around. But we don't need it. Mine is out in the garage at the moment, and there it will stay for the moment. So I'm going to lay out the second layer. And again, make sure when you're laying the second layer, you're going right into the center, because you want the frilly edge to stick to the main part of the vessel. If you only laid it to the edge of the donut there, the edge of the white part there, it would just come away when you've produced your pre-felt here. Okay, so we're going to keep going on this. And then I'm going to go back over the sides here and get a fill in any little gaps that I might have. I'm seeing through my resist. And again, it should all be at in that clockwise direction. So you see, you don't have to be ultra fussy about it. Just try and keep your direction. Go. Okay, next layer, and it's going to go in the opposite direction. So this way. And then for the next layer, it's kind of a bit like looking into the center of a storm, the eye of a storm. Or one of those twirly little toys you get at a fun fair. So I have a bit left over, but I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to wet this down. Now, if at this stage you wanted to put in a little bit of decorative fibre on top, you could do that, and just to either have it purely on your frill and have the rest plain, or you might want to put some decorative fibre on the main body before you carry out this full step. So I'm just going to flatten this down now. Ashford have some beautiful silks that you could use, silk fibre, and there's some linen as well, but I want to keep this plain for the moment. It's because the actual fibre itself, the Corriedale, is just such a lovely colour. I'm not thinking here that it needs anything extra on it. Now, okay, that's it flattened down. Now you can see that, if possibly here, you can see that the fibre is actually a bit like with the green. It's going over the edge of the resist. You want it in the center. You don't necessarily want that amount on the edge. So what I'm going to suggest you to do at this point is, you have this protector. So if you carefully lift up the edge of your donut resist and just fold it in, fold in the excess, like this, all the way around. And just move this around so you can see. Just make sure it is all very close to the edge of your donut resist. And you don't want it to go in right into the center of the donut, so just fold it in. And what you will ultimately be doing is, when you've made a pre-felt with this pack, you will take out your resist, so you'll have a nice circle at that point, and then you can, when you're fulling it, it'll stick to itself, so you'll keep your circle. Now I'm looking at this and thinking to myself, okay, do you actually see the amount of water that's in it? I'd like to remove some of that water, so I'm just going to show you how I will do that, just in case you need it as a troubleshooting exercise. I have placed my netting on top, and I'm just going to lightly press down and take out excess water. So that's just a handy thing to be able to do. Go around your whole piece and take away the excess water, just in case you find that that is an issue for you. And leave in enough, obviously, so that it will be able to felt on itself, but not so much that it slides across. So what have we got here now? We have our base, the green. We have this protector layer on top, the light plastic that will go all the way around. So it's protecting the yellow from sticking to the green. And then you have your top layer, which is going to be your frill. And what we're going to do now at this point is, we are going to start felting it. But what we need to do is to start rubbing. I'm going to put the bubble wrap on top to do this, but I want to show you what we will actually be hoping to achieve in the way that we rub. We're going to rub inwards from the side of the resist, the green fibre. And why are we doing that? It's to stop any form of lip developing. If you push outwards, you're pushing the fibre away from the resist, and the possibility is that it will develop a ridge. So as you're gently rubbing on top of your bubble wrap, you're going to rub it inwards. And the second very important part as well that you're going to do is, you're going to rub the inside of the donut part. And the reason for that is, you want to start the felting process of the yellow to the green underneath, because if that's not felted together, basically you'll end up with a disc of yellow that has separated from the green, the main body of the vessel. Now for the next part, you're going to start rubbing, but before you do, check over on your frill, and if you see that there are any parts that you feel are not as thick as others, so you might be able to see a little bit of your resist through it, just now's the time to add a tiny bit more fibre to the area that might be thinner. So just do a double check. I mean, mine is fine, I'm happy enough with it, but you just
especially if you are new to using resist, you might just want to take 2 minutes to check it over and make sure that it is fully covered and it's got an even cover on it. So as I said in the last video, we're going to concentrate on two things in this this particular section, and that is, the first is to make sure that we have rubbed down to form a proper bond, start of a proper bond between the fibres, and we want to make sure that the bonding especially takes place in the center here, where you have the center of your donut, so that your green will stick to your yellow, so it'll felt through. You also want to, when you are rubbing, you want to rub in a circular inward direction, because if you rub outwards, the fibres will travel outwards and you are more likely to get a ridge here. So what do you need for this part? First of all, you need your second piece of bubble wrap, bubble sides down, that you will cover over the full pack. And you will need a little bit of water, because you need to have some sort of a slippiness on the bubble wrap, makes it easier to rub it. And you will also need your pool noodle. What I'm using here is piping insulation. It's grand and thin, and it works in the same manner as pool noodle. Or you might be a person who uses a wooden dowel. Use whatever you normally would for your rolling at this point. So to start the ball off, I'm just going to wet the top of the bubble wrap, and I will start gently rubbing the center. Now I'll probably spend about 4 or 5 minutes rubbing this, so that I know that I'm getting good adhesion between the two, the top and the main base. And when I'm finished with this, I will start rubbing the sides inwards, as I said earlier, just so that it stops it very lightly. Now you don't need to be too harsh on it at this point in time, so be gentle with it. So rub it inwards, just to start the felting process off. I would then turn it over, flip it over, and I will do the second side. So I'm just going to work on that now. So about 4 or 5 minutes in the center, just to rub that to get it to start forming a bond, and then do, say, another 3 minutes just rubbing your hands over the whole piece and working inwards, making sure that you don't get a ridge on the edge. And in fact, what you can also do with it too is work the edges for about 2 minutes like this, so that the bond starts to form close to the actual resist. When you've finished rubbing on the top side, I want you to flip the package over and start rubbing on the underside in the same manner again. So hands over, under, flip, wet your bubble wrap, so it makes it easier for your hands to glide. And then you're going to start by rubbing in from the sides of your resist. So again, as I say, not to form your ridge. So rub that for about 2 to 3 minutes all over, and then again do your sides 2 to 3 minutes. And also it'll do no harm because you can feel right through to the center of the donut that is on the top side, to give that another bit of a rub, because the important thing here is to have start of a bonding between your frill and the main body of your vessel, so that when you start rolling, the frill doesn't start moving along the side of the vessel as you do your rolling, which can sometimes happen if the bonding hasn't started in the center. So it's very important to get those two, the yellow and the green in my case, starting to mesh together. So 5 minutes there, 2 to 3 minutes here, and then 2 minutes doing the edge on the underside. Now, when you have rubbed the center again on the bottom side, rubbed through the donut there for 5 minutes, rubbed the area, the full area on the underside, and done your rubbing at the edges there, you can flip this back over. So again, it's hand on top, hand on bottom, underneath the 2 layers of the bubble wrap, and turn. Now, at this point, what I would suggest you do is just do a very quick check to see that the frill is adhering to the base. Now you have to do this very gingerly, because very carefully, because if you don't, bear in mind this is a bit like dealing with wet paper, any sort of roughness at all, and you will find that the two come away from each other. But when you very gently lift up your yellow, your top piece, the plastic, and just get to the edge of the donut resist, and if you see that the base is actually starting to lift up as you lift the edge, you'll know then that the actual base is adhering to the top. So I'm seeing, I know it's difficult to see there, but I'm actually seeing a little bit of movement. So it's like it's lifting up off the bottom resist. So I know that I have this to the point that I want it now. And what we will do now, once you've reached that stage, is pop your bubble wrap back on top of your pack, flatten it down to get any air out of it, and then take your roller. And what we will do at this point is we will roll up gently. Now, don't make it too tight to start. Roll up the pack of the bubble wrap and the your piece of felt. What you also want to make sure is that when you're rolling, that you don't see your frill moving forward on it. That might mean that it is actually separating from the base. So roll up the bubble wrap pack, and then you take your towel and roll that over it. Now, you may or you may not choose at this stage, depending on what your preference is, to tie both ends of your towel so that nothing shifts. So that's totally up to yourself. And you're going to do 100 rolls in this direction. So it can be very light. Roll for 100 times. Now I'm going to open it and show you what will happen next, because there's really no point in you watching me roll for 400 times. When your 100 is finished, open it up, take your pack, move it in either a clockwise or an anti-clockwise direction. You decide, but make sure that you continue on in that direction. So when you are opening up your pack, unroll the pack, check to make sure that everything is still intact, and roll it up from this end. So you have shifted it around. The last set of rolls came from this side, this set will come from here, and you will continue to do that 4 times. So you roll from the 4 edges. So it's basically, I'm going to push this around here again. So you're going to roll from the south, from the west, from the north, and from the east. So it's north, south, east, and west. 100 rolls a piece, and then in total that will be 400 rolls on this side. Now I'm turning back on the video because I have rolled from north, east, and south, and I'm now going on to my west side to do my 100 rolls. So that'll be 400 rolls in total. Just a little bit about rolling, especially if you are new to felting. When you are rolling resists, anything with the resist in the center. In fact, rolling any felt, always make sure that you start off gently so that everything stays in place. Don't go madly rolling very, very heavily. So it's just a gentle rocking backwards and forwards as a starting point, because remember, you're bringing the felt to a stage where it will open up its various barbs, and because wool has little barbs on the side of each one of those little fibres, you want that to relax so that the felting process can begin, where they start to mangle basically, and then as you move through to the fulling and becoming a little bit rougher with your fibre, it starts to shrink back, shocking and shrinking back into space, and that's what gives you at the end of the day will actually make the wool shrink. So I'm just going to do 100 on my last corner, my last edge, should I say, and then that will be 400 done on this side. So you see here, it's all very light, no pressure on the body. You don't want to overly exert yourself. And for some people, they like to do it like this. I just roll it back and forward like this. And I'll stop talking now because I'm also counting. Now that's 100 on north, south, east and west on the underside of the vessel. So I've done 400 rolls on the bottom of the vessel and 400 rolls on the top side of the vessel. In total, I've done 800 rolls. So I want to do two things at this stage. One is the pinch test. And the pinch test is to check and see that the fibres are felting to each other. So you just pick it up, and if the fibres come away, then you know that you have to add in some more rolling. You have to do a bit more rolling. Now I'm actually going to do some more rolling on that because I see some of the fibres are still not attaching. And the other thing I want to check as well is to see how well the yellow top has adhered to the base. So yes, that's looking good. You won't be able to see this on the video, so it's really something that you'll have to do for yourself. When you lift up the base, the frill should actually raise off the bubble wrap slightly, and you know that it is attached. So what I'm going to do now is, because I feel this would benefit from another few rolls, I am going to roll it again on both sides, and this time I will roll 50 rolls north, south, east and west. Turn it over and 50 rolls north, south, east and west. So in total this time I will do 400 rolls, so 200 rolls on each side. So to start the bowl rolling here, I am going to flip it. Hand under, hand over, and flip it over. So, and this is purely because I felt that the fibres were not totally attached to each other. So it is nearly there on the pinch test, but I just want to bring it a little bit further. Corriedale can often take a little bit more rolling than to reach the pre-felt stage than we'll say the likes of merino will, and that is perfectly acceptable. That's perfectly okay. All breeds have different characteristics, and Corriedale is no different to others. So what might come together as pre-felt in 100 rolls of one particular breed may take 150 rolls on each side of another breed, or it might come together faster and work with 75 rolls on each side, north, south, east and west, and turn, so 75 to 600 in total. So it very much depends on the breed. So I'm going to start rolling again. I will do 50 on each north, south, east west, and flip it and do another 50 north south east west. So as I said, that will be 400 rolls in total. Now I have rolled 50 times north south east west. That's 200 times on the top side. I've flipped it and I've rolled it the same way 200 times on the bottom side, and I'm going to redo my pinch test here and see how it is doing. So that is looking much better. That looks as if it's ready to move on to the next part. So what I will do now at this stage is I'm going to cut the center out of the vessel, and I want to make quite a small hole here. So luckily here I can see where the edge of the donut is, so I can use that to gauge where I make my cut, and I want to try and make it as close to the center of the donut as possible. So what I've actually got here is it's basically a cork off a wine bottle, and that's the size of the hole that I'm going to cut. So I'm going to make a little bit of an indent here. It's just a mark to show where I'm going to make my cut, and I'm happy that that is central, sufficiently central for me. So I will cut through my layers now using a sharp little scissors here, my embroidery scissors. I want to make sure that I get through all of the layers down to the resist, the bigger resist. So here we are. Now the first thing the fibres will want to do at this stage is to run away from the center where I've made the cut, so I need to heal those. So I'm going to use a little bit of soap here and just run my finger around so it heals the fibres and seals the cut, and it stops the actual hole from getting any bigger than it is. So it's literally just run the fingers around the cut edge and with soapy fingers and seal that cut so that the fibres don't escape any further, and try and keep it as a circle too when you're doing that. Now I'm going to leave my resist in for a little while. Just put my scissors away at this point, and the next thing I'm going to do, now that the edges of the hole are cut or sealed, sorry, is I'm going to actually take the resist that's forming the frill. I'm going to take the fibre that has folded in underneath and has formed a pre-felt. I'm going to fold that in now onto the top. So I'm literally just taking it off the pre-felt, or sorry, off the resist itself. So there we go. Just move it around a bit so you can see it all coming away. So it should lift away quite easily because it's only folded underneath the top resist. And try to keep the shape. Now it may go organic, but don't worry, if you're happy with that, that's good. But just try and see if you can keep the actual circle shape that you have in the resist that's now going to be lying underneath the frill. So it's like a hem, you're tucking it in. And make sure there are no obvious folds happening when you're doing this. So try and keep it all as flat as possible. And there we have it, it's off the resist. So we just flatten that out slightly. And so now you can see you have the frill, you have the resist the frill was sitting in, you have the protector, and then you have the main body of your vessel. So we flatten that out. Nice soapy hands when you're touching pre-felt. And we'll just give this another go over just to make sure that it is well attached to the base of the main part of the vessel, not the base, the top of the main part of the vessel. Now we can start the fulling process. You've noticed that I'm not adding hot water or anything to this. I just want to keep everything nice and cool for the moment. Any addition of hot water only happens at the end. So I'm actually going to move the vessel now off the bubble wrap, but I'll just keep it on, keep the bubble wrap underneath it just to save my towel from getting too wet. And I'm going to use a very light decorator's plastic to continue on my rolling. So we lay that down, pop the vessel into it, and you might also note that I haven't taken away any of the resists yet. I want to let this start to shrink a bit before I remove the resist. So I'm going to put the decorator's plastic over the top of the vessel and smooth it out so that I get the majority of the air out of it. And I'm going to continue rolling. Actually, now that it is in the plastic, I'll actually take away the bubble wrap so that I can use my towel for the rolling too. So it's going to be rolled using the noodle again, roll it up, and then for extra traction just roll into the towel. And this time what we're going to do is it's going to be 50 rolls north, south, east, west, flip it, 50 rolls north, south, east and west. So that's 200 rolls each side, 400 rolls in total. You can see from what I'm doing at the moment, I'm rolling a lot firmer now that the fibres have merged together. So that is 200 rolls on the top side. So I will now flip it over and start rolling on the bottom side. So, 200 rolls on the bottom side too. Now I have rolled it 200 times on each side, so that's 50 times each from north, south, east and west. So let's see how we're doing here. Already you can see it's beginning to fold in on itself, so it is shrinking. And let's just check it over here now. There we go. You can see there that the frill has shrunk in from the sides, the side of the resist, and this, because it's now starting to curve on itself, this is shrinking nicely too. And there's the center of the vessel. So I'm just going to do a little bit of shaping here now to maintain the circular shape. You can do it very gently at this stage, but it's just to bring it back into shape if I feel that it is losing its circular shape. You yourself might like the organic element of it, and that's perfectly fine. It's whatever you fancy now on it. So I think what I will do with this now is I might just give it another 25 rolls in each direction, and make sure that I am happy with how it is progressing on the shrinkage. And at that stage I will check it again, and I might feel that it is ready to take out the resists at that point. So 25 north, south, east and west, that's 100 rolls on each on the top and 100 rolls on the bottom. And you can see at this stage I'm becoming quite firm in my rolling, because this is coming along very nicely, and as it is firming up and starting to shrink, you can actually be a little bit rougher with it. Now that's side one done, that's the top done, and let's see how the shrinkage is coming along. Yes, it's, you can see there it's truly shrinking in itself. So I'm going to turn it over, and I will do the same on the other side, and then I will remove the resists. Now that is 25 rolls north, south, east, west on the top side, and 25 rolls north, south, east, west on the bottom side. So you can see here that this is nicely shrinking up. So I'm going to open it up, and it is now time to remove the resist. You can see how far it's shrunk on the frill, which is grand. That is fine. So we'll take off, first of all, we're going to take off the frill resist. So just very gently, just remove that, take off the frill resist. There we go. That is finished with now for the moment. You can use that again and in your next project. And now I'm going to remove the protector, the little protector that was stopping the top from sticking to the bottom. And after that, that can be reused as well. And then we will remove the resist from the base. So the way that I find it easiest to do it is to grab the bottom of the vessel and find the edge of the resist. There it be. And then just pull it out. That's perfect. And here it comes. Now let's just see how much shrinkage we have so far. It can go a lot further obviously, but we'll just check the shrinkage at this point. And put that away for a few minutes so it causing bother. So it is starting to shrink. You can see there the actual shrinkage on it. So we're finished with our resists for the moment until the next project. And so I'm just going to put a piece of the bubble wrap back down so we can start kneading it, kneading the vessel to help it along and throwing it slightly. But what you want to make sure while you're doing this is that it doesn't start sticking to itself. So every now and again do a little bit of stick the finger inside, check it over, make sure it's not sticking, make sure the top is not sticking to the main body of the vessel, and then just knead and lightly throw. And just make sure when you're throwing that it lands in different parts all the time. So you're doing a little bit of shocking. It's still, at this stage, the vessel is actually gone cold. We're not in a hurry to move on the shrinking process. We just want it to take its time. Let it be the judge, rather than rushing it and finding that we have shrunk it too fast, which can happen. So knead check, make sure it's not sticking to itself. You can also pull in your resist to see how your shrinkage is going, and already it's starting to shrink. That's a lot bigger than or smaller, should I say, than it was. And just give it a little bit of rub at the edges of the frill. And I'm also going to just roll it a little bit on itself. Open it again. You get a little bit of traction with the bubble wrap at this stage. So I've done 20 rolls in that direction. Open it up. Remember that the fibre will always shrink in the direction of rolling. So if you do 20 in one direction, make sure you repeat it around so you can keep your shape. That is that way. I'm going to move it around, quarter turn, and roll it again. Stop it from sticking to itself. See how we are coming along on the sizing. It's got a way to go yet, but it is gradually shrinking. I'm going to turn it over and I will roll on the other side too. sometimes if you find that your piece is not shrinking, it can benefit from being left overnight for the fibres to relax, and it will it can actually quicken up the shrinking process. Just if you find you have a particular fibre that is stubborn, and there are some breeds are more stubborn than the others. Now let's see, one more side to go. But this Corriedale is working a treat. Now I know the pack is opening at this stage when I am rolling it, but that doesn't really matter to me because it is becoming nice and firm. So I'll throw again, and then I will check and see how the shrinkage is coming along on it. When I say throw, I mean you gently toss it. Don't literally slam it down. That doesn't need to happen, because that can actually make your piece quite hairy if you do it that way. So just gently toss, and you'll see now what effect this has had on it. So that is, yep, that's coming along nicely. You can see there. So I'm just going to continue doing this for a few more minutes, and letting the piece shrink a bit more, and then we can move on to the next stage. Now I'm continuing to shrink this, and while I'm doing that, what I'm also doing is, as I said earlier, just making sure that the fibres from one side are not sticking to the other, but I'm also beginning to stretch the sides, the edges, should I say, of the frill. Now I'm stretching it, we've laid it out in a crisscross fashion at 45 degrees to the edge of the resist. So that is the direction of the stretch, a bit like, as I said earlier, the bias on a piece of clothing. So that is the way that I stretch it. So I'm just stretching the edges so that they will start to form a frill as we continue on with the shrinking process. So that's it, just stretching it out at an angle rather than straight, if that makes sense. So it's out at an angle, not really stretching it the other way. So it's stretching the fibres along this way and stretching the fibres along that way. And then I'll go back to a bit more shrinking, and at this stage now it's well and truly matted together, so it's fine, it's shrinking beautifully, and it's a tough piece of felt now, becoming a tough piece of felt, so I can be a lot more rough at it, and just a little bit more throwing, and we'll see how we're coming along on the shrinkage. Flatten it out for a moment, and there we go. Just put it to the edge so there's no cheating going on here. There we go. So that's, let me just put it down here, you can see it easier. So that is the shrinkage so far. We'll probably bring it in a bit more, but at this stage I think I will heat up the water and use a hotter water for it, and I will also start getting the balloon ready to add it so I can start shaping it. Now to recap, I've rubbed it, I've rolled it, I've balled it up between my hands here like this and let it shrink even further. So I'm now happy to move on to the next stage. You can see there that it has shrunk substantially. So what I'm going to do with it now is just add some hot water to it at this point. Be careful with this part because you might need to wear gloves or something. Don't burn yourself, but I'm just going to dunk it in hot water and move that out of the way. Bring this back down again. Now this is quite hot, so it might be better if you do wear gloves. Don't burn yourself, the important thing on this. And then I'm going to give it another little go around in the hot water, with the hot water in it, and a little bit of extra throwing now that there's hot water in it. So heating it up will quicken up the shrinking process too. So let me see. Now at this point I'm actually going to just stretch the edges again. Again, I'm stretching them in a 45-degree angle to the frill. So that is the way that we laid it out. If you had decided that you preferred to lay it out in a straight 90-degree angle to the edge of the resist, you might find yourself pulling it this way, which that's fine if that's the way that you've laid it out, but I'm just stretching in the direction that I laid out my fibres. Okay, so I just bring this in a little bit and to take some of the water out of it. And I will add the balloons. So I have a little balloon inflator here that I discovered, I think left over from the days when my children were small. And I'm just going to use that hopefully to inflate the balloon. What I did first of all was I inflated it outside of the vessel just so that I could get some stretch on the balloon. So let's see if this works now. If not, it'll be down to blowing it up by hand or by mouth, as the case may be. That is not working. So let me see. Here we are. I think that the balloon got stuck at the side. Here we go. Hopefully this won't burst now. This is noisy. Even the dog is getting a little weary of it, or wary as the case may be. Now that's working nicely, and we have an extra bit of air coming through here. So I'm just going to tie off the balloon. And I will now dip it again in the hot water just to wet it fully, and I work the sides. It might be handy just to have a few balloons, just in case the first one bursts on you. And also you might prefer to remove the balloon when you're rinsing out your vessel. So I'm literally, all I'm going to do here is just work it along and shape it. Plenty of soap. And hopefully it won't burst. And also pull at the edges here so we end up with a fluted edge. See, it's nicely connected there to the side. So I'm doing all of this on the one side of the bubble wrap. Pop it back into the water. Pulling at the frill. You can see it's starting to frill up at this stage. Hot water again. This is just really shocking the fibres. So I might take my leave now for a few minutes, and I'm going to get some hot water and some cold water together and just pop it from one to the other so that it finishes off the shocking of the fibres. And then what I will do is I'll rinse out all this soap, and at that point I'll be back to you with the completed vessel so that we can then set about finishing off the shape and leaving it to dry. Now I have alternatively dipped in hot and cold soapy water to perform the final fulling and shocking of the piece, and you can see there just how much it has shrunk by. So next what I will do is I will rinse it out, use a little bit of white vinegar if you have it to neutralize the soap and bring the pH balance back to neutral, and then I will blow it up again, blow balloon up inside it to allow it to dry while retaining the shape. So we'll set the shape with the balloon inside it while it is drying. So it's quite small. Let's see, can I find the other resist? Where did I put it? Here it is. So there is the resist for the yellow. We put it on the outside of it, and you can see how much the frill has actually shrunk, and the resist for the main body of the vessel. And there's your shrinkage. Gorgeous, gorgeous material to work with, fabulous fibre to work with, very easy to work with, and I'd say that has been made in the space of around 2 hours. So it's a quick and easy project. Now I have rinsed out all of the soap, added a little bit of vinegar to neutralize the pH again, and added another balloon to it to help it regain its shape. Now wool has memories, so when it dries it will retain that shape, and I am just stretching out the frill so that we get that nice bit of movement on it again. This time I am literally pushing it in 2 ways, up and down, a bit like you might do if you were fluting an apple pie, and it will give it a little bit of a twist and hopefully make it look that little bit nicer. So now it'll retain its shape. I'll leave it alone now. I'm happy with that. It will retain its shape when it dries. So we'll just leave it dry. And that is your basic frilled vessel. I hope you enjoyed making it, and you can put your own twist on it then. Once you've made the first one, you can decide what you'd like to do. You might like to add decoration to it, stitching on it when it's dry. Totally up to yourself how you would like to work it.